Hey everyone, welcome to our Chaos to Cooperation live call. I'll wait for some people. You guys are filling up the lines. I want to say if you get dropped, please just dial back in. Again, technology can be temperamental and sometimes we just have to deal with it. Star 6 is how you can get in the Q&A lineup if you have a question and you want to chat live. I also have some emailed questions in, some really great questions that I know a lot of us are going through so many of the same struggles, similar struggles. We're going to have another call to end our series, and this will be recorded. So if you have to jump off the line, I will send you the recording. And I am ready to take your questions. So let's get started, you guys. First I wanted to speak to a couple of things, actually, because these are really important, and it will help you formulate your questions, actually, as we go through. Some of you guys are writing in, and you're not really sure what's necessarily appropriate. Like, why does this 3-year-old keep doing this even after I've calmly said not to, and I've empathized? And so I wanted to just really quickly go through the brain development, because little children under 5 are the primary focus of their development is in the emotional brain, the midbrain. And they have very little access to their higher prefrontal cortex thinking, the thinking brain, which allows us to remember consequences, to plan, to predict, to stop our impulses, to self-regulate, to have empathy to others, all of those big skills that we want kids to have, to be flexible, to shift. Little kids don't have that ability. So your 3-year-olds whine because that's what 3-year-olds do. And they hit because that's the way nature has evolved us to react and respond to our environment. So it takes a lot of repetition. And it's about us gaining that tolerance. But know that it's not that your 3-year-old isn't getting the rule. It's just that their brains are not sophisticated enough to remember, even though they've looked you right in the eye and said, yes, Mommy, I won't do that, or yes, Daddy, I'm listening, I hear you, and then walk away and 5 minutes later do the exact same thing. It's not because they weren't listening in that moment. It's because their brains are not wired up and efficient. So don't get down on yourself and feel like what you're doing isn't working. I know that some people think it's not working. I need more tools because this isn't working. And really what it is probably that it takes a little bit longer. So 0 to 4, approximately, every kid is different. The brain's wiring up really fast, and it's very inefficient, and we're very reactive, and we're very impulsive, and this is when aggression really peaks. So kids hit because that's their impulse, and we have to be there to step in to say, I won't let you hit, but we have to do it calmly if we want the higher part of the brain to actually wire up. If we want them to learn it and eventually have empathy for others, we have to use empathy when we set the limit and not get frustrated with their stage of development. So that's why I think it was day 2 when I said, we see our kids as manipulating us instead of actually having a developmental challenge. And that can be a hard shift. But it's one that's imperative for you to be able to have that compassion for your kid, to understand that developmentally they're not there. And emotional age does not equal chronological age. So you may have an 8-year-old that's still struggling with impulses. We have to look back at the environment. How has the relationship been? What kind of dynamic has been going on? Has it been really punitive and sort of forceful and threatening? And do I get angry a lot? Well, that's going to affect your child's developmental trajectory, the way that their development unfolds. Doesn't mean that it's permanent. It's a great thing. We always have the power to change. Don't get down on yourselves feeling like, well, I haven't done this for my 12-year-old and now they're at this stage. It might be a little bit longer. You might have to do a little bit more repair before you start to see real change, but you can build back that influence, and we can strengthen our brains. But know that our kids, even the older ones, the brain is undergoing so many shifts and changes, especially in adolescence. And kids respond they can be very reactive, and they can be very moody, and they can actually challenge you're being very logical and calm, but they're challenging you. Well, that's sort of a way that they find out about themselves and about what they think more deeply. And again, their brains are undergoing tremendous transformations, and they don't have access to thinking, again, before they act a lot of the time. They start to go through similar stages as when they go through as in toddlerhood. All right, let's get right to your questions, guys. Star 6 is how you get in the Q&A lineup. and I will answer your questions, and I have your emailed questions in. So I'm going to start with Angie is first in the lineup. I'm going to unmute you. Hey, Angie.
Hi.
Hi, how are Yes, I can. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. So what's going on? What do you
Well,
have?
I think others might relate to this too, since we're coming off the holidays and all. My, Mason is also a December baby, so he has his birthday in December. We celebrate both Hanukkah and Christmas in our home. So there's a lot of presents and gifts, and I've tried to be as understanding as I can, because he seems to get so disappointed, like every day. Is there a present? Is there a present? And wanting a gift and getting upset that he doesn't have a gift. And
okay.
And I don't want to raise this selfish child who just wants and wants and wants.
What have you done so far?
Well, whenever he says he wants a toy, I say, "You like getting presents, don't you?" And then he says, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you like opening them, wrapping them?" We talk about what he likes about them. Right.
So validation is great. You validated that he really liked. Now I would sort of maybe clarify it for him, because there was a lot of stimulation. The Hanukkah, you get a present every day, so that's he was sort of expecting that now. It's, for him it's like, okay, well, where did that go? Do we keep doing that? Because he's just 5, so it's probably his first year of really understanding what has happened and getting really excited by it. So perhaps doing some activities, one, just letting him get it out, like let's draw some pictures about it, or let's, getting involved emotionally and creatively.
The artistic creative thing he's not responding to that. Whenever I try to say, what do you want to say? I can write it out, or you want to draw a picture, or he doesn't want to. He's not a big one to sit down and want to do pictures or draw. Once in a while he will. Start bringing out, or I start drawing. Even at school, he's the kid who comes home with no paints. Once in a blue moon, he does. He'd rather be plain. He's very physical. He asks a lot of questions about things. So when he's in that mood, it works when I can answer questions and respond to him. And when he gets upset, he might just get really, he huffs and puffs and lets it be known he's upset.
What exactly are you looking for, do you think?
There's something my husband and I were talking about. At this age, I guess my question is it too young to already start talking about, being grateful for what you do have and focus on what you do have? I feel like that seems too logical. Children who don't have anything or don't get anything, because I know, people, we got toys and we gave them, donated them to the, Toys for Tots, and his school gathered toys and did that also. So he's slowly learning about that, but I don't think he really understands the concept. So I guess that's where I'm at.
He's too young.
That's what I feel.
He's too young. I think you're overthinking it maybe a little bit.
I
would just stay with validating his experience and tell me more. If he doesn't respond to getting out those feelings, I think with the whole holiday thing, maybe getting a calendar and sort of looking let's look at the next time that there's going to be presents, because since his birthday is really far away, I don't know if there's anything in between, but looking at, because he doesn't really have a concept of time, he's sort of just expecting that. I think validating that he's expecting it. We did that a lot. We did that almost every day last month, didn't we? And then it was your birthday, and then leaving it there. Just again, validating what his experience was. You don't have to then say, well, you have all these things. Just say, yep, it was sort of really exciting to do that every day, and now we're not doing that anymore. Let's look on the calendar and see when it's coming again. And then sort of that gives him something to sort of focus on when he asks about the presents. Let's look at the calendar, because you've already sort of done that, and then it becomes a tool for learning about, all kinds of different things. You can just expand that. And I think teaching him about toys that he does, it's a great conversation starter to say, you have all these new toys. Is there anything that and some kids are going to be like, no, I'm not giving away anything. But it's a great way if you want to introduce this idea of giving back or giving away or volunteering to say, sometimes there's kids that don't get presents. Is there anything that maybe you think that we could give?
Yes, we have done that. It's toys that you don't really play with that much anymore, and we have done that, and he's responded to that at times.
So I think that is a good start. I wouldn't do any more because he's too young. It's 5.5, 6 is when he just turned 5. So he's still in that emotional learning point where everything for him is very much based in how it makes him feel and the experiences, and he's creating memories. And so for him, it's not really about, gratitude comes through our experience. It doesn't come through being told. I feel like that can make a child feel guilty, and then they feel, I'm bad for having these feelings of wanting more.
Exactly.
And he's too little to.
He's also, the addendum to this was when he was given a present, he would say, well, I didn't want this. So, the whole very honest kids will say, this wasn't on my wish list.
And I actually have a couple of, just because I want it for time, I want to get to the next caller. I actually have a very specific video exactly on that, what to say to help kids with gratitude. And if you just type in gratitude and teach through love, it'll come up in one of those teachable moments. It was exactly that about when your kid says, I already have one of these. I have a teachable moment just for that. You can look up and do that. So. I
will for sure. Okay, good.
Thank you so much, Angie. Awesome questions. I know that, like you said, a lot of people will relate to that. All right, you guys. So 951, you are next in the queue for the Q&A caller. So I'm going to unmute you.
My name is Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So the question that I have is how to handle a public tantrum. It's something I've really been struggling lately with my 4-year-old.
Okay.
And it seems to be affecting my 5-year-old because she gets really emotional seeing him cry, and it's hard to control him. He just starts kicking, and I've been trying to stay calm, and it's just something I've really been struggling with.
It can, especially when it's in public, because then you have all the eyes on you. And suddenly you're not just mom, you have to be mom on showcase, and how am I doing? And everybody's, I totally feel for you. I also have a video specifically on this too, so I hope you will check that out on my YouTube channel after. But a 4.5.
He's 4.
He's 4, I'm sorry. 4, again, we are really emotional. The tantrums come because that's just where they are. So what we need to do is first decide, is this something that we are in a space where we can get through the tantrum and let him have that emotion? Obviously, you're going to stop a child from kicking, from hurting, but you don't want to stop their emoting. So you have to decide, is this in a place where I feel safe, like I can do this, where I can give him this empathy, where I can hold him and try to connect, or is it a place where we need to get some privacy? And sometimes we get into the habit of sort of, and maybe not you, but even for other people, because I know this is a question that's been emailed in too, we get to that place where we want to say, you have to stop crying or else we're going to leave kind of thing. And so what I want to do is, instead of coming in with that feeling of you need to do this now or else, come in with here's what we're going to do. It's not, we can't cry in this space. If you're in church, if you're in an event, so what we have to do is we have to go. And this is about helping your child. We have to accept that at 2, 3, 4, or even if, the child's 5 or 6, if they're having trouble controlling their impulses, threatening them, fear, of course, can be a short-term motivator, and sometimes we use it, right? But it's not an influencer. It's not a long-term influencer. So when you can, when your needs are met, this is when you can find that compassion and you're able. This is when you want to say to the child, you know what, we can't do this, so we're going to step outside. If you're in the grocery store, it's not we're leaving right now. It's, let's go take a moment. I know that, let your children know that they're capable. I know that you're having some feelings, and you're going to be able to calm down when we get some space, I think, so that we can breathe. We need tools for kids. So what does your son respond to? Some kids respond, they need to shake it out, movement, touch, squeezing things. My daughter was very physical, and I used to play tug of war. We were at home. It was easy because we weren't in public. Anything to squeeze. I will carry stress balls in my back seat of my car and have them in my purse and pull it out. If I see my daughter get it, because we want to try to get to our kids before the explosive moment, before they get really, really out of their minds, because then at that point we have to let the brain reset on its own time. But if we can get there before they get to that explosive point, we can use some tools. Sometimes when kids are feeling aggressive, clapping their hands, just squeezing, blowing up bubbles, like they're blowing up a balloon. You can teach them to breathe really slowly in and out, but make it fun. So it's like, let's blow up a balloon.
I think I can use those tools for myself.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Because you want to take it. It's like the oxygen mask on an airplane. You actually want to do this before you go and address your child. Do this for yourself. This is the self-care, the first step. Actually, in day 4, what are we on, day 3? Day 4. Some of you are already in day 4 because some of you are down under in other parts of the world, but that's where I am sending out my 5 steps to peaceful conflict resolution and some steps for you guys to follow. And the first one is take a breath. You have to you can't go in if you're feeling activated, let all that stuff that comes in your head that my child is, pissing me off, whatever it is, let all that come up. Validate it for yourself. Validate that you don't like what's going on. Let that be okay. And then when you feel yourself sort of detached from that as you're breathing, and I give you some tools for breathing, and there were some tools in the video today if you haven't gotten to listen to it yet, but you really want to be the model by using these tools because then this will help your child learn to self-regulate. Right now, your child needs you to stay calm when this happens. So what you do just depends on the moment. Do we need to leave? Is it okay to stay safe? Do I need to step in and say, I'm not going to let you throw things, but I'm here. You're having a really hard time right now. Some kids just want a hug. Some kids won't ask for it, and they'll even push away your touch or your connection, your physical connection right away. But if you keep at it, if you don't get offended, if you don't not getting offended, that's the biggest thing. If you can do that, it will help you. Oh, somebody's having a tough time. It will help you stay calm. Because you staying calm.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to get off the line.
That's right. I'll mute you up.
I have a little one calling for me.
That's okay. I muted you up, but it'll be on the recording, Kimberly, so you can continue to listen. So you guys, for tantrums, and somebody else, Marilyn, had written in, so I'm going to go right into Marilyn's question because she asked, how should I properly handle my 3-year-old's tantrums? And what we have to do is, the first thing is, I know it's so hard, but we do have to build more patience and tolerance. And I'm going to give you guys some exercises as we continue to go through this retreat for just that. Because usually we want our kids to change, but if we're not able to change, if we're not able to stay calm and compassionate, it's really hard for our kids to get there. It's really hard for them to shift because they don't have as much experience. We have to remember who has more experience being able to shift. And sometimes we don't have a lot of experience either. And if she can get that crying out when it comes up now, very normal, very typical. It's about how calm do I stay, what kind of tools do I give my child, and addressing the needs and feelings. You're feeling really frustrated. Come sit on my lap. That doesn't mean that the tantrum is going to necessarily stop right away. But what it means is you are providing the experience for your child's brain to wire up in the right way. And that's your long-term goal, is for these skills, these emerging skills of self-regulation, of empathy, impulse control. Those are emerging skills. They're not skills that your kids have a lot of access to. Sometimes, for sure, but not always. Let's see. The next caller, area code 305, it looks like. So I'm going to unmute you. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It's Gabrielle.
Hi, Gabrielle. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Lori. My question is with my 6-year-old. My 6-year-old daughter seems to be having difficulty, what I describe as difficulty controlling her emotions. So what I mean by that is anything that sets her off, she immediately starts to cry. That's her first reaction. We were doing homework this evening, and I was trying to explain to her how to do the math, which she's struggling with, and she immediately starts to, well up in her eyes, and I said, I'm trying to help you, Gigi. What's going on? Mommy's trying to explain it to you. And she says, you're mad at me. You're mad at me because I don't know it, or I'm not good at math. I don't, and then that's just one example of what makes her cry, but it's just almost anything that happens that's emotionally, I guess, challenging to her, her immediate reaction is to cry.
Okay.
And I just think, I don't know, I'm concerned with it because I feel that at 6, that I try to have her breathe through it and, talk her through it and explain to her, I'm not mad at you. I'm just trying to help you. I'm sorry if you felt that I was mad at you. She's been doing this now for like about a year probably.
Mm-hmm. Have there been any changes? Did she just start school? Did she go to a new school? Is there anything that happens to be sort of prominent in the last year, 6 months?
School, she went to kindergarten and I wouldn't say she was acting that way. I think in the first, definitely possibly towards the end of kindergarten and then starting first grade. First grade has been more challenging to her.
This is first year of first grade?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So huge, big change. Huge change right there. 6, I want you to just have a little comfort if you can in knowing that developmentally, those emerging skills that I'm talking about are just emerging now for her, just emerging. I know that we see these kids who can talk back and argue and debate and, ask for what they want and carry on conversations, and we think of them as much more mature than they are. So for her to cry, I feel for her because I'm a crier. When I get angry, when I get stressed, and I'm 41, and I'm better at it now. But I've been, in workplaces where I had to run in the bathroom, and I don't have any control over it. I'm just a very sensitive person, and tears happen to be one of those. And I'm not emotionally unable to handle the situation. It's just tears will come out. And my mom's the same way. My grandfather used to say that he was going to rent us out at funerals because we could just cry at the drop of a hat. So don't think of this as a detriment. This is really a sensitivity that, yes, we want to, as we get older, learn to manage so that it doesn't interrupt things and interrupts life. But at 6, I think that it's really still very much developmentally appropriate. And remember that chronological age is not necessarily the emotional age. Some kids may be 6 or 7, but you know what? They're still kind of 4 or 5, and they're just developmentally, they're just a little bit behind. Some kids mature a little bit faster. Temperament has a lot to do with it. Some kids are really slow to warm up. Was she sensitive as a baby? Was she the kid that, took some time, or was she the kid that ran right in? Usually the sensitive ones, the kids are they're the ones that hang back and check things out and take a little bit more time to warm up. Not always, there's always different characteristics and different, we all have different experiences. But that sensitivity, that crying, isn't something I don't think it's necessarily interfering. It's just her way of expressing. So I think you don't want to give a lot of power to it. But that feeling of what she said about that you were mad at her, that's how kids experience our frustration. It's not that you've told her that or that that's true. But children, especially, and somebody, Susan actually wrote in and said, how do you respond to kids, when they say, I hate you? And a couple of other people had that. And that's a little bit different, but it's along the same lines. When kids are saying, when they're crying or when they're saying, I hate you, and they're being aggressive, what they feel is unloved. And it's not because we're not loving them. It's just because sometimes we can be a little too focused on logic and not the emotional connection, or we can be too focused on what we have to get done because we're afraid that they're not going to learn in the moment what we need them to learn, and we sort of get really focused on what should be happening. And sometimes we just sort of have to step back and connect in that moment and let your child have tears. If she can get that crying out when it comes up now, within the safety of your home and your relationship, then when she goes out into the world, she's going to be able to control it. But if she feels like this crying is something that needs to stop or that should be stuffed away, as opposed to something that needs to be understood and expressed, then when she goes out, she's going to get really stressed because she's going to feel the cry and she's not going to know what to do with it because it's not really allowed at home, so it's definitely not going to be allowed out in the world. Again, this is sort of how a child's mind processes because they don't have the sophistication to know that, you know what, Mom, you're just trying to help her. You just want her to understand this math. School's really stressful for kids these days. It puts a lot of pressure on them. So if you're noticing that your child is stressing out, you might want to, in that moment, back off of the task that you're doing and work on building her skills in terms of how the breathing is great. Just keep doing it. Don't think that because when we do it once that that it's enough, that our kids are going to, okay, then you know what, she knows she has to breathe, and so now breathe and then stop crying and let's get on with math. It's kind of, it doesn't happen that fast. It could take several months. But I might not, that's my really general thing, because I don't know everything that's going on in your home. Generally, I want you to look at the dynamic in your home. How do we speak to our kids? And this is for everybody. How do we speak to our kids? So when they say, I feel like you're mad at me, it's just because it's sometimes our impatience and our frustration that's coming out. So validate that. If you recognize that, if intuitively you go, you know what, I'm being a little impatient here, breathe through it. Validate that you felt impatient. That's okay. Anger's okay. It lets us know that we want a different outcome. It doesn't mean that we have to force that change on other people. We have to force other people to change so that we feel better. But this emotional acknowledgement, a lot of us aren't aware of our own emotions. And so we're doing this right along with our kids. So look at your dynamic in your home. Where else might she feel burdened or overburdened or stressed out? Or if it's just coming from school, validate that for her. You know what? It's starting school. It sounds like maybe there's a lot of work and you're not used to it. And then stop with the but. Sometimes we want to go, it's a lot of work, but you have to get it done, or but you'll get better, or but we want to just give them that outcome that we're focused on. I want you to sort of stay in the emotional processing right now.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Does that help you, Gabrielle?
It does. I needed some reassurance that it was okay for her.
Oh yeah.
I can deal with it, and I have to help my husband deal with it. But I wanted reassurance that it was okay for her at the stage, that she's at. I was just concerned that it wasn't something, or obviously, in my head that it's not something that at this age she shouldn't be doing.
No, it's really typical.
Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to send you lots more tools in the next 5-6 days that we are going through that's going to enhance everything that I'm saying here tonight. So if you feel lost, if you feel like I need more, I'm going to give you guys more. So just hang on and be patient. And we'll have another call too to kind of come back and readdress things. So thank you for your question and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much.
All right, you guys. I've got area code 347. Hi there.
Hi. This is Clarice.
Hi, Clarice.
My daughter is 5.5, and she has always been what I would describe as intense. Even as a baby, she would demand my attention. Like I would look over at somebody else, and she would grab my face and bring it back over to her. Mm-hmm. So she's always been really intense. It's manifested itself in ways like, let's say we're late for school and I have to rush her. She will say things like, I want to kill you, I hate you, I want to die. Even like last year, there was one moment in time where she said, I want you to die in a fire. Another time she asked me for a knife so she could cut me. And this is all out of anger. So, most of the time when I can respond in a calm way, because usually we're rushing or she has to do homework or there's some sort of a stressful event going on, and this is how she will react. Usually when I can react calmly, I'll say something like, oh, you're really upset about this. Oh, I wish we never had to do this homework. But, that doesn't – I honestly can't respond that way all the time, especially when she does stuff like this in public.
Let me ask you what your long-term goal is for your daughter.
I want her to be able to express herself appropriately. I mean, I understand that, she is an intense kid. And, there are certain things that you don't like being rushed in the morning. You don't want to be told, 27 million times to do the same things that you do every day. Or the homework. She is in a very challenging school. And she can meet the challenge. It's just that it's not easy.
I totally feel for you because when you're trying to rush in the morning and you have a child that's screaming at you, it's not easy to stay compassionate in that moment, especially if you're late. So I want, as much as you can, how can you support yourself so that doesn't happen? Because here's the thing. When kids get stressed, you can't stop what happens to the body and to the mind. At 5.5, again, these are all really little kids, she doesn't have a lot of impulse control. And when she feels that pressure, it's like she's wrapped up in chains so tight and she can't get out. And when we start saying, when we're frustrated and trying to rush, we're just making the chains tighter. It's not your fault. I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose. I just want you to understand that when we make the chains tighter, our kids are not able to shift in the ways that we want. So at 5.5, if she's in a really challenging school, again, at 5.5, her job is to play. And so being in a school, if it's really challenging, if she's taking that on as stress, we have to look at how that's affecting her, because it's not that she needs to change. It's that sometimes we have to look at how can we give this child more support, because maybe we can't get rid of the stress or the challenges, but where can we give them more support? Where can she get more downtime, playtime, connection time with you? We have to look at what's missing. And in tomorrow's email, you'll get a graphic that will help you. You can print it out, and it's going to ask you to first decide, is this a skill challenge? Is my child needing more practice with executive function? Is she contributing to the fact that you guys are late because she's sort of dawdling? That's executive function at 5. Kids don't have, 5.5 even, kids don't have a lot of executive function practice. So doing things, paying attention, staying on task, really needs someone side by side. So it's difficult for you guys. But where is that a skill challenge? It sounds like she's really stressed out, though. It sounds like this is a stress challenge where we need to find ways to help her offload that stress that she's feeling. Maybe you're not taking her out of the challenging school. Maybe there's not going to be any more time in the morning. But where can she get it out at other times of the day? Roughhousing with our kids after school, having 10 minutes of really quality cuddle time before you start the day can help ease the tension and give kids the emotional start. 'Cause sometimes we wake up and we're just like ready to go. Okay, you're up, get dressed, here's your breakfast, and we just start going. And kids are like, again, the job of a 5.5-year-old is to play and explore, and we put them to work. Again, it doesn't mean that we're going to change that or that we have to shift our life, but we have to just sort of recognize, okay, this is our challenge, and how can I support my child more? Does she need some cuddle time in the morning? Does she need to go to the playground for 20 minutes after school so that when she comes home she doesn't have a meltdown kind of thing? Where can I support my child? Or is it a state of the relationship? So these are the 3 areas you want to decide. Do I need to give my kid more skills? Are we going to work with maybe some timers or some visual guides? Do I need to support her stress? And when she's freaking out like that, connection. You can be silent. You don't even need to necessarily respond. You can hug a child that's going, when they're saying things like, I want to kill you or I hate you, they're really just feeling that pressure, and they don't have the verbal skills to stop, think about their words, and choose to say, you know what, I'm feeling very stressed about this, Mother, and I need some more time. You know what I mean? Like, we would love it if they could, but at 5.5, it's just not going there. It comes out as, I want to kill you because I want this to stop. And they'll hear that on the playground. They'll hear those kind of words on TV. So they're picking up words from their environment, and they know that they're aggressive words. They know that they have a lot of power, and they're trying to feel, they're trying to express, they're trying to be noticed, to say, this feels bad. So that's a lot. I don't want to give you too much. I want to give you a chance to say what comes to mind. And again, look at the environment. Is the state of the relationship challenge? Has there been a lot of tough interactions or tension or negativity between you guys that has, when you maybe get frustrated, then she reacts even more strongly because it's built up over time?
It's possible because we are a single-parent family. There's a lot of things that need to happen.
Oh, okay. That's a huge, right there. That changes the dynamic a lot because you guys are working together, and if you don't have another support person there, it shifts. It shifts of how much pressure you feel, how much pressure your kid feels.
Yeah.
Take it slow. Go. Sometimes just reconnect, like taking a week off to reconnect when she gets really frustrated in the morning and when you get really frustrated in the morning, just as an example. Take a week to sort of let go of the expectation and connect with her emotionally as much as you can. It's going to be hard. You might need to sort of fill up your resources. You might need a night out, a day off before you can really be emotionally available to do that for her. But that's the most important thing. When you can be self-regulated, your children's brains will develop in the right way, in the way that you want, towards that maturity, towards that level of skill. But again, at 5.5, it's a little bit early, and definitely starting first grade is a big change for a lot of kids. So validating that too. Asking her about her most favorite thing and the most awful thing about that is a way to connect. Doing it with dolls or Legos or whatever she likes to play with, doing it through play, starting those conversations. So it's not, because we ask kids questions and they shut down. They don't really want to talk about it. But when we do it through play, or when we're tickling and we say, oh, you know what, I know our mornings have been really tough lately, and I don't like to yell at you. And I know that you don't like to yell. Let your kids know that that they're not being this way because they want to be, but because we have tough times sometimes, or we're working through a challenge. Sometimes it's a phase. Sometimes, 5.5 developmentally, again, that's right on that cusp of upgrade for the brain. And it happens every 6 months or so in the early years, in the first 5 years, kids, shift back and forth. And then at 5.5, and then around 7, 9, 11, 15, we have all these times where the brain is upgrading, and sometimes we lose a little bit of access to skills that we previously had, why we reorganize the brain. So go easy, both of you go easy on yourselves during this time. Okay, Clarice, thank you so much for sharing with you. I'm going to mute you up. I want to just speak to a couple of questions that were emailed in. Some of you guys have older kids, and I know we've talked a lot about the little kids. And I want to just speak to the older children, because sometimes they're in the same place as our little kids, even though they're older. But they're going through different challenges, and they go through different stages where they're finding connection with their peers more important, or they're finding about themselves, and they're challenging everything we say to reinforce their own identity and understanding of themselves. And it's sort of just the way that they're interacting, because that's how they're maturing, and that's how they're learning to, like arguing isn't necessarily bad. Sometimes it's a way for your children to practice their negotiation and get to know you more so that they can understand themselves better. So they go through all kinds of phases, but I wanted to just speak to some of the kids that are a little bit older. Regina had written in asking about her kids that are 12 and 10, and she wants to know why she has to ask them 10 times to do their chores. She's very busy and she can't do everything, and she says, they see me struggling to get everything done before I go to sleep, and they don't care. It gets to the point that I'm so upset that I'm yelling at them. So I know that a lot of us have gotten into this cycle, not getting what we need, what we think we need, what we want to happen. So we get stressed, we get frustrated, we yell, our kids resist. And that becomes a cycle. And you think that they don't care, so that you yell, and then they think that you don't care because you're yelling, or that you're too busy to care about their feelings, so they continue to ignore. And that's sort of just a negative cycle that can perpetuate. So how do we get out of that negative cycle? First way is understanding, again, that developmental piece, executive function. Kids need help with executive function a lot of the times. Even 11 and 12-year-olds, our prefrontal cortex continues to develop until until 25, and now they're telling us that the brain continues to even grow and change into our 40s. So it's something that can always change, but it really does not mature for many, 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 many years. So telling them over and over and over again, one, it could be a relationship thing. You could be in this dynamic where it's the negative cycle. But it could also be a skill challenge. So this is, again, where we're going to decide. And sometimes it's a combination of all of these things. Kids feel overburdened, so they get really stressed out, so they need more stress support. Or sometimes just developmentally, they need more skill practice. How can I support my child doing the chores? Again, making our kids feel capable instead of like they are forgetting things. Connecting their chores to their interests and their skills. Who has decided what chores are to be done? Have they had input? Do they have choice? That's going to help them pay attention, consider you, care. Again, that's all executive function. To be able to care about another person, to be able to have empathy for your situation is really a higher brain skill. And if they don't feel cared for, they're not going to be able to access that empathy. Our brain is a use it or lose it kind of organ. If we're not constantly reinforcing the neural pathways to empathy by having empathy for our children, then that skill, that circuitry gets pruned away. It gets weakened. But the more we use empathy, the more it gets strengthened. So every time you use it, whether your child's 4 or 12, the better they'll be able to regulate. Of course, not always, because they're kids. Childhood is filled with emotional overwhelm and breakdowns. I mean, my 30s were filled with that, right? So it's not necessarily that we're going to stop what's happening in life, but we have to understand that our kids don't have a lot of experience with it. So you want to relate these chores. I want to know, why aren't they doing their chores? Is it really that they feel that you don't care about them? Because if you're in this cycle, so adding playfulness, Regina, and for anybody else that might be having these challenges, playfulness is a great way to release the tension and the control that kids feel. When they feel like we're controlling them, like they're being micromanaged, they resist. But when we're being playful, when we inquire with playfulness about the chores, instead of with disdain, and when we get all upset and with frustration and with judgment, then kids, they step away. They don't want to connect. It doesn't feel good to connect with someone who's threatening you or judging you or telling you that you don't care about them. So that's sort of going to actually just hardwire them for ignoring you. And I know this is tough if you are, like you said, you're busy and you can't do everything. But sharing your needs in that way, going up to your children and saying, you know what, I know that you guys haven't been doing the chores and I've been nagging about it. I think what I'm really needing is just some support. And when you don't do your chores, I get frustrated. So I want to be able to help you, because you must feel like you don't have a lot of support. If your kids aren't supporting you, helping you, they don't feel it. They don't feel cared for. Again, it's that caring feeling. And it's so important to maintain that as kids get older, because their friends will become more important and their peer opinions will become more important. We will lose that influence if we don't secure that relationship. I also do have a video on chores, so go to my teachable moments. But acknowledging, that sometimes it's tough to get through this situation. Chores aren't fun. They're necessary. And they're not fun, just validating that for your kids, but doing it in a way that doesn't have the but at the end. I know chores aren't fun, but you have to do them. Just stay with the validation. And I know that you guys really don't like this. I know that this is, just share your understanding, and not with your intention to convince them to do what you want. Here's the thing, you guys. I can't give you tools to make your kids do what you want. Everything comes down to relationship development, how we feel. Right? We don't act based on what we know. We act based on how we feel. What is our perception in this moment? Even as adults, knowing is sort of last. First, it's thinking. First, it's feeling, perceiving. What are my beliefs? How do I feel about this? And then we instantly react. We make a decision. Is this a threatening situation, or is this a safe situation? And a lot of the times, our discipline creates threatening situations, and then we shut down our kids into their survival brain, and then they can't shift. They can't do what we want. They can't remember. So older kids can definitely feel like they have lost that connection, and we may have been in a pattern of punitive control, so you may not have a lot of influence right now. It may take some of the rebuilding relationship before we get to that. All right. Oh, God, you guys have so many good questions that I wanted to get to. I want to talk about siblings really quick, because there's a few of you guys had questions about siblings and the bickering and how to, I know Beth did and Nicola did, and I think your kids are 7 and 10 and Beth's kids are 5 and 7, and Beth was saying her boys are either the best of friends or the worst of enemies, and the 5-year-old usually wants his own way. Again, we want to reframe how we're saying this. My 5-year-old has a really strong idea that he wants to share. It's really important to him. That takes a little bit of that negative charge out of he wants his own way, because, that tends to make us see our kids as manipulative or as wanting what they don't deserve. We can't connect from that place. And then she says the 7-year-old will lose patience and resort to unkind words or hitting. Siblings, right? It's this age-old problem, challenge. I don't want to think of it as a problem. There's a great book, Siblings Without Rivalry, by Elaine Maslish and Adele Faber, who also wrote How to Talk to Kids So Kids Will Listen, How to Talk to Teens So Teens Will Listen. And again, this dynamic, how have we set it up? How do our kids see each other? Sometimes siblings are expected to just love each other and learn to work together despite personality differences, despite the fact that in real life they might never be friends, when they grow up. We have to accept the fact that, yes, we're family, we need to respect each other, but we don't necessarily have to have the same interests. We don't necessarily have to get along. But sometimes we think that we step in too quickly and we try to force our kids to be friends or to be nice to each other because we're afraid that they never will. And then we set up this pattern where maybe we see one child as the victim and one is the bully or one is the aggressor, and then kids start to live up to what we say about them. So, the comparisons that we make or the praising that we give. How do you praise your children? What do they believe about themselves based on how we've handled the interactions before? Do you come in and start saying, you shouldn't hit, that's not nice, you need to use your words, I told you a million times? Then that child starts to feel like they're not very capable. Or do you come in and say, I'm not going to let you hit. Looks like you have something important to say. And we, sometimes, we have to take some time to do this. If our kids are working through getting better at skills, we have to take the time to put the effort in. Right? We can't send our kids out, we wouldn't send kids out to ride a bike without ever having put on the training wheels. And the training wheels stay on for a little bit. So we're the training wheels. We need to stay on and stay close for a little bit until they get better at it. But coming in and saying, I'm not going to let you hit, but you have something important to say. I know that you'll use your words when you're feeling calm. And say to the other child, let's give your brother a moment. Tell me again what you wanted to say. Right? This lets a child know that you're there to keep safety, that you're not upset, that you're not going to be flustered by or upset in terms of you're not going to be thrown or dysregulated by their angry reactions, that you can handle it. Our kids need to know that we can handle it. And then not giving all of our attention to the one child who we see as being the hurt one. Now, certainly if there's a big age difference or if, it's a baby, we need to certainly attend to the child that's hurt. But we don't need to make the other child, we don't want to push them away by making them feel shamed for what they've done. We could say, you were feeling really angry and you hit. That's not okay. I know that you would do it differently if you weren't feeling so upset, so I want to find out more. Tell me more about what happened. He took your toy and you didn't like that. Okay, what can we do next time? But all of that has to happen, of course, once the child's regulated. So sometimes you're simply going in and you're teaching kids those tools. Feeling really upset. Can't talk right now. We need to breathe. We need to take some time. Let's come back in 15 minutes. You're going to go to your room. You're going to go to the basement. Does that sound good? What's your idea? Coming in with a neutral, matter-of-fact, I can handle this confident tone. That's how you're going to get your children to respond and learn. Again, not in the moment necessarily. Sometimes they do. Sometimes that's all it needs, and especially as this becomes the norm for your family, when compassion and empathy are easier to access, then self-regulation for kids becomes easier to access, and they start to they're able to handle things. But see them as capable and kind. We have not necessarily been given that time in our own early years to have that emotional awareness. Our emotions or needs perhaps were not really paid attention to when we were younger, so now we sort of dismiss them and we stay focused on logic. And parenting is really about emotional connection. It's a relationship. It's not a job that you do with kids. It's not a do to kids. It's a, connect with kids. And that's sort of the idea that I want us to go into parenting with. All right, I'm going to take another caller. Area code 832.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is Afshan. How are you?
Hi there. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for giving me a chance. Yes, Lori, my question is, I am working on all these communication skills, reframing sentences and everything. And I feel like that my 11-year-old son is getting advantage of that. But still, there are situations, suppose right now I am attending the call, I explained him everything that I'm going to do that, and I'm doing that for you. for you guys, because now you liking me more, that okay, you are not yelling this and this, but still he created so much mess downstairs. Like, even I was not able to listen the call, and ultimately, like, I have to go down and I said that, will you please behave, kind of a yelling tone, and then he understand. I know that I keep doing that, and then by then maybe it will take 2 years, 3 years, or I don't know how many years. I have to continue it. But how should I handle all this?
Absolutely. So we can really lose our patience when we're trying to get something done, especially when we're trying to do something for our self-care like this, like feel inspired, get help, support, and that's being interrupted. We can get very triggered. So it sounds like you were able to sort of maintain that for a while. So be gentle with yourself. Know that you are also perhaps learning to stay calm and tolerant with your child as he's growing too. So we want to set boundaries. What we want to do is we don't want to beg, plead, nag, or insist that our children behave or follow the boundaries. We want to contribute. We want to help. We want to say, here's the limit. So we would say to him, I'm going to be on this call. I know this is really difficult for you to not come into the room when I'm on the call, because we don't even want to use words like, don't interrupt me or anything, because that can feel judgmental to a kid. So what I need to know from you, we say this to the child, is I'm going to be in this call. What I need to know from you is, how can I help you so that you can stay engaged in something until I'm finished, so that I can help you not come in this room until I'm finished. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the child is necessarily, at 11, he's going to have a little bit more ability to follow, but it doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be able to stop him.
Yeah, he promised me, okay, you can go and you can attend for 2 hours. Yeah, I will control all of those, all 3 of us. We will behave. Yeah.
But did we set up, agreeing to behave is different than saying, that's the thing what I want to say. We can say, I want you to behave. It's very vague. I want us to set up really specific things with our kids. What do you need so that you can stay in this room? Because now you've invited him to contribute to the solution. Instead of just telling kids, because telling kids to behave, be polite, we're telling them to be something. And that really doesn't reach them. It doesn't really, because it's vague and it's sort of, they want our approval. Children want to please us. So they will say yes to that without having any idea how to really do it. So it's not that he didn't want to please you. It's that he probably got, in that moment, dysregulated. He needed you. He got stressed. He didn't know what to do. So his drive, kids, their instinct is to come towards us when they need help, when they feel stressed, when they feel alone, when they feel disconnected. 11, 12, again, is one of those sort of developmental shifts. Know that it's not that, he didn't want to, but that something got in his way. And his tool was to come find you. That was all he had access to. It was the only resource that he had. So setting him up for what he can do when he gets that stress. So, okay, this is what you need. You need these games, or you need to have this timer to know when I'm coming back. We're going to do all this. What happens now if you feel like you can't handle it and you want to come get me? What are you going to do? Working this out with kids beforehand and then doing it over and over, having the experience over and over of practicing the skills. Maybe it's a skill challenge for him. He needs practice. He needs something that can keep him engaged and attentive. That can be really difficult, especially in this techno world that we live in. Maybe not you guys in your particular situation, but for other callers out there, sometimes it's really hard for kids to stay on task. Sometimes our kids are used to us not really setting and forcing a limit, but getting angry. We keep saying it, and then we get angry because they can't do it. But if we go in with the intention to help and sit and really say, okay, this is what's going to happen. How can I help you keep this limit? Because I know you have trouble sometimes. What's going to help you? I'd be curious to find out what's really going to help your son, like what he has to say about that.
Yeah, but he just say, okay, and then, so like the tool which works for me is yelling.
Well, that works. That's a pattern. It works because he's used to it, and because kids fear that. It's a short-term work, so it does work. Fear, yelling, punishing, that stuff can work to get what we want. But I want you to build your child's skills. So I want to know what's his, so we want to find out what's his challenge. What's the real challenge for him?
Yeah, because I know, like, he raised up in both patterns, in both ways, like the traditional way, and now I started this way. But like, he's giving me the toughest time.
I got to stop you there. Because we got to do a reframe. Day 2 is the reframe. He's giving me the toughest time. Can you reframe that?
Yeah, if I reframe it, I would say that he's having trouble. Yeah. This is a challenge for her, that how he should avoid blaming her sisters, how he should avoid that name calling her sisters, or control her tantrum, crying. He's having a trouble, and he's having a challenge, though he is turning 12. But this is still, it is a challenge for him.
15-year-olds have that challenge. 17-year-olds can have that challenge. 30-year-olds can have that challenge. So know that it's a challenge that he's having now. It doesn't mean that's where he's always going to be. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I really, I appreciate all of you guys so much for being willing to share. It takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to share your story. So thank you for doing that. I feel like I've gotten to a lot of questions, but if I didn't get to your question, we're going to have one more call, and it will also be recorded. So submit your questions, your follow-up questions, and we will be sure to address them on the next call. But also visit us on the Facebook group. Because, like somebody said earlier, just hearing that so many other people are having these challenges, and you guys have been so amazingly active in that group and sharing and writing things. You've helped so many people. I don't even think you understand. I've gotten emails from people that haven't posted but are writing in to say that they're getting so much support just hearing that what they're going through is normal and that they're not alone. I think that often we have these expectations for ourselves and for our children that they should be getting it faster and they should be learning and they shouldn't be getting so upset and all. There's some mainstream idea out there, people telling you that your kids should be better behaved and all. No. You're right where you need to be. We're all learning exactly what we need to learn at exactly the right time. I truly believe that, and I think we need to believe that so that we can face obstacles with confidence and not feeling beaten down and not feeling like we've done something wrong. So stay the path. Thank you so much for connecting with me here tonight and also in that Facebook group. That's where you guys can connect with each other and me one-on-one. Some of you have emailed questions directly. Post them on the forum, and then other people can also respond. So it's a great way to get your questions answered, find resources, support. People post links, all kinds of things. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Have a wonderful night, and I will see you on the forum. Take care.